Joseph never blamed God for his pain. He never blamed God for his pain. Now, there's no phrase or verse that says Joseph never blamed God, but there is a verse that is repeated over and over again. And that was the Lord was with Joseph. Here's one time it's repeated, Genesis 39. But the Lord was with Joseph there too, and he was kind to him by granting him favor with the chief jailer. Every time Joseph's situation seemed to go from bad to worse, we see this phrase, but the Lord was with Joseph. But the Lord was with Joseph. How would this verse be a constant theme of Joseph's life if he was blaming God all the time for his pain, for his suffering, for the injustice? See, blaming God is a dangerous trap, folks, because we can go down that road if we're not careful. Blaming God will hinder you from experiencing the presence of God. Why is that? Because we tend to not spend a lot of time with people we're mad at. And if we're mad at God and we're blaming him for our pain, there's not going to be much communication, connection going on spiritually. Blaming God can cause us to stop praying. Blaming God can hinder your worship. It can keep you from reading God's word. It can kill your desire to serve. On and on it goes. God's an all-powerful, loving God, yet he did not stop the pain from happening, and now sometimes we want to hold him responsible for it. Probably the most repeated question I have heard as a pastor over the years with people in pain. Why did God fill in the blank? Or maybe why didn't God? We often have the wrong expectation about pain and this life. I think we could even unconsciously believe that because we follow Jesus, we're followers of Jesus, shouldn't there just be a little bit extra protection, right? Sometimes we forget what Jesus said. Sometimes we forget what Jesus promised. John 16, Jesus says this, I've told you all this so that you may have peace in me. See, the peace is in him. It's in our relationship. It's not in the circumstances. It's in him. Here on earth, you will have many trials and sorrows because this is the broken world we live in. Many trials and sorrows. But take heart because I have overcome this world. I've overcome it. So you're going to find your hope in me. Many trials and sorrows equals pain. What does that mean? Pain. What did Jesus mean? Pain. I mean, sorry, but that's what he meant. But Jesus is saying that he has overcome the world, but overcoming the world and our connection with him doesn't mean a pain-free ride. And when we hold God responsible for the pain that we have endured or we are currently going through, enduring, it can destroy our desire for God's presence. And maybe this is where some of you are this morning. You know, God, where are you? And you've just stopped pursuing God, stopped praying. And my hope is as we keep going through the rest of the story, it helps you move forward. Blaming God is something we just never see Joseph do. Now, blaming God will also hinder us from experiencing the favor of God. And part of this, the favor of God does show up in the chaos, but sometimes we're blind to it. We miss his fingerprints involved in our pain. God will show us his favor even in the midst of pain. Now, for example, we see it all through the story of Joseph, God's favor. We see it with Potiphar. He's sold as a slave, horrible. He gets put into that position, and then God elevates him in the household. He's falsely accused. Yes, it's horrible. He goes to jail. Then he's elevated even in the horrible situation, a jail. And then we see him elevated with Pharaoh as well. Even in the midst of the chaos of pain, God was still present, and God was still at work. God didn't abandon him. Blaming God, I believe, blinds us to seeing the evidence that he has not abandoned us. And isn't this sometimes what pain does? God, where are you when I was going through pain? I mean, Joseph could have asked that question, where were you, God, when I was in the pit? Where were you when I was in the caravan? Where were you when I was in jail? He said, I was right there with you the whole time. Yet if we can back away from the blame, when we back away from the blame, I believe that we can see the fingerprints of God even in the midst of the pain.